All right, so today we are going to go over the training for the fitness professional assessment using the Bodyview software. This is our body composition software that we use to track the progress of the body composition results for our clients at Transformation Fitness and Wellness. I will be going over some live results or some live examples today. I would suggest that you have the PowerPoint that I'm displaying at this moment pulled up on your phone, or maybe you've printed out some copies of the slides, or you can have it on an iPad where you can make notes. I will be sticking to the PowerPoint loosely, but I will be showing you some live examples, so I will be pulling away from the PowerPoint during the presentation to show you some of those pointers. Okay, so this is just the slide that's going to tell us what we're covering today. And as you can see, we're going to go over the basics of logging into Bodyview, starting your assessments while entering your client information, how to scan a client. We're going to talk about the scan locations and how to review the results and how to save everything in the Dropbox that we have set up here at Transformation Fitness and Wellness to save all our data. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out of the slideshow and keep that off to the side where you can follow along. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about how to access the Bodyview software. So we'll go up here just to the Bodyview software, and I'm going to open that up. Pull that off to the side, and you can see on our next slide, we're going to talk about how to create a new client profile. So we'll go through this real quick. You have a couple different options here. Obviously, creating a new client profile, we'll talk about that in a second. If I wanted to open an existing client profile, I would just do that by first or last name. First things first, okay, you've got a brand new client in front of you. We're going to enter the name. And then email is optional here. We don't really use this system currently to send out emails through the software, the Bodyview software itself. So that is at this point optional. If you are connecting or communicating with your client through accountability emails with Gmail or through Infusionsoft, this is not necessarily needed. We do need the birth date. We need to specify the gender, and then we're going to talk about this right here. The athletic type is the parameter that we set that tells the system which algorithm to use when scanning with the ultrasound device. So checking off one of these changes the scan type and how the scan is read. Most of our clients are going to be in this athletic parameter. Non-athletic is going to signify folks that are definitely out of shape, visibly overweight, or maybe obese. Elite signifies people that are, just by looking at them, someone with very low body fat percentage, that classic six-pack, and someone who is in very good shape to begin with. We don't see a lot of this type of people here in our general population type setting. We may have a handful, but not that many. Most people are going to be in this athletic type setting. They're right in between. They may have a little bit of body fat on them. They can move all right, and they just need some help with their body composition. You're going to set their height in inches and then their current weight in pounds. And then you want to set the group ID. That's TFW clients. We can use the group ID feature for other things, like we have a separate setup for staff, or if we have promotional contests or we need to separate different groups out, we can do that. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to open up an existing client. I'm the only person with my last name in the system, so it's just going to pull me right up. And we're going to talk about what we do next. So before we talk about the circumference measurements, I'm going to talk about your interface here. This interface right here can allow you to communicate to a client who's wondering or has questions on what they're going to look like at a certain body fat percentage or what they can expect from certain results. You can use this tab to do that. Most of the time we are going to be using the Measure, My Health, Trends, and Scan tab. So starting with the Measure tab, this is where you're going to input all of the scan and circumference and weight data for a client. The My Health tab is where you're going to get all of the results. And then the Trends tab is also another tab where you're going to see results, but you'll see it more in graphical and raw numbers. And the Scan tab is where we actually perform the scans. We get a lot of feedback on the information about our scans. I do want to make a note when we go back to the Bodyview tab, which we don't use a ton, but we can use this down here in the corner for the preferences. This is where we can change clients' profile data. So if I messed up on their height initially or their birthday or what group that they're in or their athletic type, I can change that here and save it and then make those changes at any time to the client profile. So we will start on the Measure tab, and we will have inputted the client's weight data. They will have gotten on the scale, preferably without shoes and with as little clothing as possible. You will take their weight and put it here. So after that, you will make marks on their skin for the scans, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then we're going to do the circumference measurements. So the circumference measurements we do at Transformation Fitness and Wellness are the chest, waist, hips, and thigh. So we're going to go ahead and talk about those right now. You will input this data here in these spots down here. Now we do have options for the neck, the bicep, and the calf. We typically don't take those sites, but if a client requests it, you can do that as well. Just a note here, if I'm typing this in and I need to go back and change this, I can't just type over the top of it. You have to backspace and then retype. So let's talk about the sites. The side of the chest is with the tape measure on inches. We are measuring all of this in inches, and as you can see, you would want a female to have on a tight-fitting sports top or sports bra, and then the gentleman will have no shirt on. You're going to place the tape right at or above the nipple line with the go underneath the arms and have them relax their arms and shoulders. And then you will take the measurement just off to the side for the women, and then for men across the chest or off the side around the back. The next site, the waist site, is right across the umbilicus. You can tell this gentleman here is very, very trim in the midsection, so the tape rests right over the top of his hips and the love handle area here. Obviously, many clients are not going to be this trim, so the tape may protrude out over these portions of their waist, and you just want to make sure and get the tape all the way around and snug, not pinching in on the skin. That's a good point to make when you look at the tape. You don't want it to be pressing into the skin. It should lay flat across the skin and be snug, but not too tight. Then we have the hip measurement. This is the widest part at the buttocks, and you want to make sure that you have the tape all the way around the hips and in line with the umbilicus, and that the tape isn't diagonal one way or the other. It's straight across the back of the hips. And then with the thigh, you want to make sure you have the thigh in an elevated position, or with having the client put their thigh out in front so that you have a good way to get around the thigh, and it's at the midpoint between the inguinal crease of their hip and the patella, and you'll want to make sure that you use a tape measure to mark off that point as well. And then we'll get back into the Bodyview. And I'm putting in all my data. And once I get the circumference data put in, now we're ready for the scan. So I have all my data for the circumference. Now I'm ready to scan for the body fat portion of the testing. So up here, you're listed the points that you will do. You always want to make sure which formula you're using. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. It's going to be 3 sites by Jackson and Pollock. That's the standard one that we use at Transformation Fitness and Wellness with the Bodyview software. As you can see, you have options for other ones here, and depending on who you're scanning, you may be able to change those. But for most folks in a general assessment, you're going to do the 3 sites by Jackson and Pollock. And then you're going to check and make sure that's correct. Yes, for a man, we do thigh, chest, waist. For a woman, it's different. We do thigh, tricep, and hip. And those points are a little bit different. We'll talk about those in just a second. So once you make sure that your formula is correct, you've got your points list pulled up, you have one of 2 methods that you can use to scan. And one is the average method, and you will talk about that with a fitness professional at a later time. Today, I am going to show you how to do the scan method, which is the way that we typically will scan a client for body fat. So for that, the next portion of the Bodyview assessment will be done in the scan tab. So let's go ahead and go through the sites real quick. So the tricep is a site that we will only scan on a woman, and it's midway between the tip of the shoulder here and the back of the elbow. And you will use a tape measure and you'll mark off the midpoint for that. So you can use a non-permanent marker to mark that site. The hip is just above the iliac crest. That's the point that you're looking for. You don't have to use a marker for this because you have a bony landmark in the iliac crest that you can press inwards with your fingers and find. This is another site that we only use for women. The thigh is a scan site that we use for men and women. And again, the mark is made halfway between the inguinal crease and the top of the patella. It's right in the midsection of the thigh, and you'll just use a non-permanent marker and a tape measure to mark off that midpoint. Men, the thigh is the exact same. The other point on a man that we'll do is the chest, and midway between the anterior axillary point or the top of the armpit and the nipple. It's a diagonal line from the top of that axillary crease down to the nipple, and you'll mark midway between that. You'll use a tape measure and a non-permanent marker to make that mark. And then on the waist, this is for the men. It'll just be 2 to 3 centimeters off the umbilicus or an inch lateral from the umbilicus. So we do have a landmark here in the umbilicus, and you don't necessarily have to use a tape measure or a marker to mark that since you have the umbilicus there to go on. So again, you'll refer back, make sure you have the appropriate site set up. Right here we have a man and we've got thigh, chest, waist. I'm going to flip over to the scan tab. If you read here, these are all the steps that you need to accomplish before going to the scan. Choose the appropriate site location, mark the site, place the ultrasound gel on the Bodymetrics wand, and then you're going to scan the sites, which we're going to go over now. So this drop-down menu here allows you to choose which site you're scanning. So for a man, we're doing thigh, chest, waist. None of the other ones will we use here. Okay, so let's just say we're going to start on the thigh. And I am going to go ahead and make a live scan of my own thigh now to show you exactly what it's going to look like on the screen. So once you're presented with the Bodyview wand, the ultrasound wand, you will be placing just a dime size amount of ultrasound gel on the wand, and then you will spread it across the mark above and below that you've made on the thigh. And then you'll make sure that you have a smooth gliding surface on the skin. So if you are with someone who has a little bit more hair on their skin, you may have to use a little bit more gel to make sure you have a smooth sliding surface. Make sure not to use too much gel, because if you do, you won't get a good image back. You're going to press lightly into the skin, not super hard, but you definitely want to make sure and press down into the skin. And using the scan method, we do hold the button for the length of the scan on the wand. So using the method I just described, I'm going to scan my thigh. So the thigh is a really good example to use because it has very little adipose tissue compared to the amount of muscle tissue that it has in the actual structure of the quadriceps area of the leg. So what we're looking for here is interfaces between the adipose tissue and the first layer of muscle tissue and also connective tissue. As you can see here, we have some striated muscle tissue here. And then there's this first layer of this interface between the adipose tissue, which is a little spacier up here. You can see a lot more space and a lot less striations. And then this is our first layer of fascia and connective tissue, which connects that adipose tissue onto that first layer of muscle. So when we do these scans, this is the line that we're looking for, and this is a pretty good line here. It can tell me that this first layer here, from the most superficial layer of the skin at 0 millimeters down to about 10 millimeters here, is the depth of the adipose tissue. Now, what I'll do next is I will track the interface, which basically means just get a measurement on this interface. I'm going to take the cursor and put it right in the middle. And this little part here jumped up. I want to kind of bring it down even with everything else, straighten the line out as much as possible. So now I've tracked the interface right in the middle of the white line. I need to stop tracking. And now what I need to do, since I've set up a tracked interface, I need to measure it. And the way I do that is I take the cursor and I drag it down. You want to make sure you get it across the midpoint of the scan. I've got about 10.7 millimeters. You can do it that way. Just make sure you get to the midpoint of the scan. You can pull the box down from the midpoint here. It doesn't have to go all the way across the screen. You can see I got about 10.4 there. We're looking for about 10.7. You may have to do it a couple times to get, so that's about right. 10.6 will do. Now, I need to put this back over to my measure tab. Remember where all my points are. And I'm going to say to measure. It's going to ask me if I want to do that, and I'll say yes. I also want to save this image in case I want to go back and look at it later. I'm going to save the image. Now let's go back over to the measure tab. My thigh, my chest, and my waist are marked here, and I have done the thigh because I put that over to the measure. So I need to do my chest next. Okay. And I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to scan my chest so you can get a good look at what a chest measurement looks like. Again, you use the same procedure. Make sure you get about a dime size amount of the ultrasound gel. What you're hearing now is me wiping off the gel. You definitely want to do that for the client because that ultrasound gel could get a little messy before you put their clothes back on. I'm going to spread out that gel. Now, when you depress the button on the ultrasound wand, you can see that the indicator light turns red, and you wanted to keep it red by depressing the button for the length of the scan. Just a reminder on that. So I have changed my scan point to the chest up there, and now I'm going to scan my chest. All right, so you can see the difference here in this scan from the thigh, as the pectoralis major is more of a fan-like muscle that moves diagonally from the collarbone down to the sternum. So when we measure this and track the interface, I'm going to put it right here in that first layer of interface. And we want to take the measurement in the middle of the muscle. So we can't take it over here where it's very superficial, and we can't take it over here where it's very deep. We want to put it right in the middle. So I'm going to stop tracking. I'm going to take my measurement tool, put it right in the middle, get about an 8 mm read on that first layer of adipose tissue. You can see a lot more muscle striations and some deeper fascia and connective tissue layers right on top, and you can also start to see the beginning of my rib cage down here. And I'm going to put it over to the measure, and I'm going to save the image. You want to check? There it is. Now I have one left to go. And that would be at the waist, the level of the umbilicus for men. Just about an inch or a half inch off the umbilicus. And I'm going to make that scan now. I have to make sure that I chose the waist. It's also a good idea to always remind the client the ultrasound gel might be a little cold. And here's my scan for the waist. Okay, so the scan for the waist and the hip, well, especially at the waist, is something that we need to make note of because there are lots of different layers in the torso, and it may make reading the scan a little tougher. But the same rule still applies. You want to look for the largest interface that makes sense. So for me, it wouldn't be these top interfaces because that's just a little too shallow for my body composition. If someone were to look at my body composition, they're not going to say, well, he's at 7% body fat. If you're at an elite level, someone's first layer may be up here. My layer is probably more like down here in this last interface, and that makes sense for me. Now, if you have someone who is with a lot of fat tissue at the level of their umbilicus, you may have to change the depth. The depth over here is set for the scan, the ultrasound device, at right now at a maximum of 60. If you have someone that you know is going to have maybe 45 millimeters of adipose tissue before you can see an interface, you may have to change that, and that's something you can always think about doing. So I will stop tracking, and I need to take my measure. And I saved the image, I took it over to the measure, and there we go. So now we've got all of our points, and it's giving me a body fat percentage of 20.8. And as you can see here, we've gone through reviewing the scan results. Just another note here, if you're in an assessment with someone and you get done and you're just not sure if some of your scans are correct, you can pull another fitness professional or the owner or the lead fitness professional in to discuss. And you can use this compare images feature. Whenever you see this come up, save current points value, just say yes. So here's all the saved images I have for this, this person. And if you look back, we've got everything from the earliest scans down to today's. I'm going to pick an early scan. I'm going to pick it on the thigh. And I'm going to go to today's scan over here. Now, if you look, not that much of a difference right here in the level of, you've got 10.2 and 10.6, and you're looking at August over to December. So if I wanted to make a change, if I have this scan pulled up on the left, I can say transfer to scan. And now this scan has been brought back for me at the thigh, and I could remeasure off this scan. Maybe I'm thinking, hey, this is a better scan to go off of. I've got a clear image here. This makes more sense for this person. You have to be a little more intuitive with this software to get a good result. And then I'm going to send this back over to measure. And that's going to override what I had for the thigh. You can see it changed it to 20.8%. Okay, so you've taken care of all of the scans and you're done with the measuring portion. Now you're going to talk to the client and communicate to the client their results and what that means. You're also going to go through their goal setting in Infusionsoft and things like that. But before you get out of the Bodyview software, there's a few things you have to make note of here. So when you are communicating the results, anytime you change a tab, it's going to ask you this, and always just say yes. So there's a couple ways you can communicate the results to a client. You can use the My Health tab. Over here, it has a summary of their results, body weight, and then it breaks their body weight into pounds of fat and lean weight, which represents muscle tissue, and then their body fat percentage and the formula that you used. It's also going to give you some feedback on their BMI. It's important to make sure that a client knows that BMI is not as accurate a value to depict overall health and fitness as body fat percentage is. BMI can be skewed depending on the person's height. So that's something you want to communicate to the client with. You also have some basal metabolic rate and daily energy expenditure data that is represented over here, and you can use that to a certain extent with the clients if you wish. Another way to communicate the results is using the Trends tab, which gives you graphical representation of body fat and circumference. You can see that I use my profile a lot to take measurements, and so mine looks very skewed because it's all over the place. Another way to show their progress, and sometimes the most effective way, is just to click on Show Data under the Trends tab. And now I have the raw numbers that represent the level of success I've had with my body fat percentage. It's got rows and columns, weight, fat percentage, waist to hip ratio, which is built off of the circumference measurement, fat mass, fat-free mass, and then all of the sites that you did the scans on, your thigh, your chest, your waist. These columns right here represent the difference between the scans from one time to the next in millimeters. Okay, so you've spoken to the client about the results, and now it's time to save your data. We always want to make sure we save the data in Dropbox at Transformation Fitness and Wellness in case the actual hardware of the computer is damaged or becomes faulty, so that we can have the data saved. So a couple different ways you can save your data. It's all going to go to the same place. So what you want to do is you want to click on the My Health tab. Full report. Now this pulls up a very information heavy and graphically displayed report of all the results that they've had up to this point. I want to save to file. And I need to navigate to this person's folder. So fitness professional, and let's go to active clients. And then I need to pick, let's say this is a group client, and let's just say for the sake of example, this is Adam's data. It's my data. My name is Adam as well, so we'll just use Adam. And then I've got a folder for his assessment data. So what I need to do is save it in a file format that's easily readable and accessible. So this is how we save files. See, I've used it before. TFW assessment data. You can say body composition data, just use the same format. Today is December 21, 2015. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now that saves that data as a PDF that you can email to him. Now some clients may really like this. Some folks may not want it at all. You're still going to save it. Some folks like the raw numbers. So you can also save the number file as an Excel file. I'm going to say save to file. And as you can see, he already has that data saved in here. You can signify that as raw data, just so you know the difference, and it's an XML file that they can open in Microsoft Excel. Save that. We'll go back and double check. Okay, here's his assessment data, and you can see I've got his report and I've got the raw data report right there. And just to review the folders you're looking for under Fitness Professional, your name, this is me, and then my active clients folder. And if it's a one-on-one person, they'll be under individual training and then team training. And that's how you're going to go about saving that data from Bodyview. When you're done, you just exit the session. It's going to ask if you want to. You close out the software. So that's going to conclude this part of Transformation Fitness and Wellness's training using Bodyview for the client assessment. We will talk more about how to set goals with clients and how to use this data to help establish SMART goals and realistic goals that a client can accomplish in a 6-week period of time. If you have questions, please reach out to a fitness professional or Tony Lindauer going forward on this assessment data information.